Hi, I'm JC Hollywood. This is This Week in the 80s for the week beginning July 9th. Once upon a time there was a carpenter who decided to keep an ape as a pet. But the ape didn't want to be kept as a pet, so he escaped and kidnapped the carpenter's girlfriend, took her to a nearby construction site where he climbed to the top and tried to fend off the pursuing carpenter by throwing barrels at him. Now, this heartwarming tale was brought to you by Nintendo, and it first hit arcades in Japan on July the 9th, 1981. Donkey Kong first started life as a Popeye video game dreamed up by designer Shigeru Miyamoto, but when Nintendo couldn't acquire the licensing rights to the characters, he decided to create his own. The story goes that Nintendo were in trouble after shipping a bunch of arcade units of a video game called Radar Scope to the US in the hopes of breaking into that market. But by the time it hit US shores, Radar Scope was already considered to be outdated and US audiences didn't want it. So, Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi tasked Miyamoto with creating a video game to replace Radar Scope rather than destroying the units themselves. Wanting to create something more interesting than the shooters and maze-based games that had dominated the video gaming landscape up to that point, Miyamoto sought to create a platformer that had a plot that worked in service of the gameplay and a storyline that built to a conclusion. Yes, it was simple and a little silly, but it was engaging enough to make the game a monster hit worldwide, and that little carpenter, well, he went on to become the world's most famous plumber, Mario. Did you know Universal tried to sue Nintendo over their use of a giant ape named Kong, claiming that it infringed on their exclusive copyright to King Kong? Unfortunately, when it went to trial, it was proved that Universal didn't own the exclusive copyright that they claimed, and worse still, they knew it at the time. Maybe they just thought the big barrels of their legal team were enough to scare away the plucky little carpenters of Nintendo. On July the 13th, 1985, a 16-hour concert witnessed by 172,000 fans and watched by an estimated viewing audience of 1.5 billion was held in stadiums across 2 continents in London and Philadelphia. It was the brainchild of Bob Geldof and Midge Ure. It was called Live Aid. The show was originally supposed to start in Australia, but the time difference made scheduling impossible, so instead Australia held their own version 12 hours earlier. Hosted by Molly Meldrum, Oz for Africa featured the cream of Australian talent at the time, kicking off with an 11-minute set by Mental as Anything and finishing 4 hours later with a 22-minute set by In Excess. The main concert, though, started at Wembley Stadium with Status Quo performing Rocking All Over the World. For the next 16 hours, over 70 acts would perform in 20-minute blocks. Phil Collins was the only artist to perform both on the Wembley Stadium stage in London and the John F. Kennedy stage in Philadelphia, catching a Concorde between sets. But for many, the highlight happened on the Wembley Stadium stage, with 2 bands performing a little over an hour apart. The first of these, U2, took to the stage at about 19 minutes past 5, performing their monster hit Sunday Bloody Sunday. Their impact had already been felt in the UK, but they were just starting to make waves in the US. At the 7-minute mark, they launched into their second song, Bad, and what followed became one of the most iconic moments of the 80s. Midway through the song, lead singer Bono, looking for a moment of connection with the fans and, it has to be said, looking for his own moment to etch into the memories of the viewers, dropped his mic, climbed down off stage and made his way towards the throng, gesturing to several of the concert goers to come and join him on the other side of the barrier. As members of security helped some of the fans over the gates, he embraced one and slow danced with her while the band vamped, completely unaware of what was going on or if Bono was even still alive. The act meant that their big hit, Pride in the Name of Love, had to be left out of the set, and Bono's bandmates were furious with him, but he got his iconic moment. It became one of the most talked about from Live Aid, and even today, it is something to behold. Then, an hour later at 6:41, Queen took to the stage. Lead singer Freddie Mercury headed for the piano and banged out the start of Bohemian Rhapsody before segueing into Radio Gaga. Hammer to Fall, Crazy Little Thing Called Love, and We Will Rock You followed, before Mercury headed back to the piano for We Are the Champions. It was an almost perfect 20 minutes of a band at the height of their power, and it gave fans a preview of what they could expect just a year later when Queen would return to the stage at Wembley Stadium. If at first you don't succeed, just release it again. Not words to live by, especially in the music industry, but somehow it worked for one singer who, this week in 1982, was in the middle of a 6-week stay at #1 in Australia. That singer was Charlene, and the song was I've Never Been to Me. The song, a tale warning women of the perils of actually enjoying your life, could have only been written by two men in the late 70s. It was recorded by several artists in the 70s, including Randy Crawford, but Charlene's version was, well, not a hit. It was her third single to hit the Billboard charts, only to immediately stall, this one peaking at number 97. The record label decided not to release her second album. Charlene quit the business, got married, and moved to the UK. Cut to 1982, and a radio DJ in Tampa started playing the song again, and fans lapped it up. Motown Records, realizing they might have a hit on their hands, tracked Charlene down, re-signed her to a new contract, and re-released the single without actually re-recording it. It finally became an international hit for her, peaking at number 3 in the US and reaching number 1 in Australia, Canada, Ireland, and the UK. The lyrics are trite at best, but dressed up as meaningful, and perhaps the most ironic of them all is the narrator's claim that she's been to the Isle of Greece, which isn't actually a place. Many films from the 80s are considered to be cult classics, which is often just a nice way of saying that they don't really hold up today. One such film came out on July the 9th, 1982, but it was in many respects a turning point in filmmaking. It combined the old Hollywood technique of hand-painted effects and backgrounds with the new technique of computer-generated images then in its infancy. It showed what was possible in this brave new world, although interestingly enough it was snubbed at the Oscars because they considered CGI to be cheating. The film is not just praised for its special effects, however, it's also praised for the performances of its lead actors, particularly Jeff Bridges. Unfortunately, the plot, allegedly inspired by the video game Pong, is a little thin and generic and not nearly as engaging as it needs to be. Nevertheless, Tron is an entertaining and important film, if not a great one, and it certainly helped define the look of the 80s. July the 12th, 1989 saw the release of a beloved film that was basically brought to life when director Rob Reiner met screenwriter Nora Ephron. They tried to find several projects to work on together, but their banter kept coming back to the central question of what would become this film's plot. Can men and women be friends? Just friends? When Harry Met Sally wasn't supposed to be a hit. It was a little date movie that was released up against a string of summer blockbusters, but something about it struck a chord with audiences. Perhaps it was the honest way it dealt with modern relationships, or the frankness with which it handled sex. Or maybe it was just the fact that Meg Ryan faked an orgasm in Katz's Deli and everybody felt that they had to see it. Whatever it was, it became a mega hit, and it still resonates with audiences today.